I didn't expect the worst moment of my year to happen at 37,000 feet somewhere between Chicago and Phoenix, but life has a way of cornering you when you're tired enough not to fight back. It started with 3 words sharp and casual tossed at me like they meant nothing. You're in the wrong seat. Not a question, not a check. Just a verdict delivered by a man who had already decided who I was before I opened my mouth. My name doesn't matter much anymore, but that day on that plane, it mattered a lot. I was 21, running on 4 hours of sleep, wearing a thrift store jacket, old sneakers, and carrying a backpack that had seen better days. I'd worked a double shift the night before at a community shelter, then caught an early flight because it was cheaper because I was always counting dollars. I'd saved for months to buy that ticket. First class, 1 seat. 1 quiet flight where I could breathe. I found my spot, 2D, sat down, buckled in, and for maybe 10 seconds, everything was fine. Then he appeared. Mid-40s, crisp blazer watch that probably cost more than my rent, the kind of guy who walks like the world owes him space. He stared at me, frowned, and said it again louder this time, "You're in the wrong seat." I smiled politely because that's what you learn to do when people talk down to you. I said, "I think you might be mistaken, this is my seat." He laughed, not kindly, more like I'd just told a joke that proved his point. He waved at the aisle like he was shooing a fly. "Economy's back there." That laugh hit harder than the words. It carried certainty, confidence, the kind that comes from never being challenged. I pulled out my boarding pass and held it up. He didn't even look at it. Instead, he snapped his fingers for the flight attendant like summoning help to fix a problem. She arrived already, tense eyes flicking between us. He spoke first. "This passenger's confused. She's sitting in my section." The flight attendant looked at me then, at him, then back at me, and I saw the calculation happen. Clothes, posture, tone, decision made. She asked me for my ticket, glanced at it for half a second, then said, "Ma'am, we'll need you to move to your assigned seat." I felt my stomach drop. "This is my assigned seat," I said, quieter now. 2D. She sighed like I was exhausting her. "Let's not cause a delay. There's space in the back." People were watching. Some openly, some pretending not to. That familiar heat crept up my neck, the one that comes when you realize you're being tested not for truth, but for compliance. I thought about standing up, letting it go, swallowing the injustice like I'd done 100 times before. It would be easier. Faster, invisible. Instead, I sat still. "I paid for this seat," I said. My voice shook just a little. "I'm not moving." The man scoffed. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "They just let anyone up here now." The word anyone hung in the air, thick and ugly. The flight attendant straightened authority, snapping into place. She told me refusing crew instructions could get me removed from the flight. She told me she was being patient. She told me I was making a mistake. Something inside me clicked. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was years of being told I didn't belong. I looked up at her and said, "I'm not breaking any rules. You are." That was the moment things escalated. She told me to step into the aisle. I refused. She reached for my arm, not hard, but enough. Enough to cross a line. Someone gasped. A woman across the aisle pulled out her phone. I said clearly, "Do not touch me." The man started clapping, slow and sarcastic. Finally, he said, "Get her off the plane." That's when I realized this wasn't just about a seat. It was about power, about someone deciding I needed to be put back in my place. I took a breath and did the one thing I'd promised myself I'd always do if I ever needed help. I made the call. "Mom," I said when she picked up. The flight attendant rolled her eyes. The man smirked. They thought they knew how this ended. My mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She asked where I was, what flight, what seat. Then she said, "Stay calm. Don't move. I'm handling it." What they didn't know was that my mother built airports for a living, that her company managed terminal security systems, runways, that the airline we were on had a contract with her firm, that she understood regulations better than the people threatening me with them. While the flight attendant called the captain and the man leaned back, satisfied something shifted. The captain arrived, listened to the story, looked at my boarding pass properly this time. He frowned. The woman recording didn't stop. Neither did the murmurs spreading through the cabin. "Why was she asked to move?" the captain asked. "She didn't look like she belonged here," the flight attendant said without thinking. Silence. Thick, uncomfortable silence. The captain's face changed. He asked me if I'd been touched. I nodded. He turned back to the attendant. "That's a problem." The man in the blazer started protesting, talking about loyalty status, about respect, about how ridiculous this had become. No one was listening anymore. When we landed, there were people waiting. Not police for me. Officials. Company reps. Quiet, serious people with badges and tablets. My mother walked on board last. She didn't rush. She didn't smile. She looked straight at me. First made sure I was okay, then turned to the flight attendant. "This ends now," she said, not loudly, not angrily, just final. The rest happened quickly. Apologies. Explanations. The man suddenly very interested in his phone. The flight attendant escorted off the plane, pale and shaking. Later, I learned she'd had complaints before, that this wasn't new. It had just never been challenged this publicly. As I walked down the jet bridge, legs still trembling, people avoided my eyes. A few nodded. One woman whispered, "I'm glad you stood up." I didn't feel victorious. I felt drained. But underneath that was something else, a quiet pride. I hadn't made a scene. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't disappeared. I took my seat again on the connecting flight. Same clothes, same backpack, different weight on my shoulders. I think about that day a lot. About how close I was to standing up and walking away, about how many times people do exactly that because it's safer. And I wonder how many moments like that go unrecorded, unchallenged, buried under the idea that it's just easier not to fight. So here's my question for you. If you'd been on that plane watching it happen, would you have spoken up, or would you have looked away? And if you were me, tired and alone and outnumbered, would you have stayed seated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Argue with me. Share your own story. Because these moments don't change anything unless we talk about them, and silence is still the most comfortable seat on the plane.